Hi, and welcome back to You Haven't Seen What? A married couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. I'm Joelle.
And I'm Parry.
And we're married.
Yes, we are.
Still married.
Well, we said the podcast would stop abruptly if I did something wrong to cause us to no longer be married, because of course it would be my fault. So, still going, still married.
Still going, still married. Took a little hiatus for MegaCon.
Yes,
but
MegaCon.
Okay.
Sorry.
As long as it's not Suckacon, we're fine.
This year it was not, because nobody really big canceled. So
well,
nobody really big we wanted to see canceled.
There you go. There you go. That is the ticket right there.
Yes. Those who wanted to see McCoy from the new Star Trek movies, he did cancel.
Yeah,
so
they
sorry.
got Jook.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of other people to see.
Yes, lots of awesome people. And specifically, we got to see a bunch of people from The Princess Bride.
That's right. And Parry had no problem shaming me to Carrie Elwes, to Chris Sarandon, and to Wallace Shawn.
You admitted it yourself to at least one of those. To Carrie Elwes, you admitted it yourself that you had not seen The Princess Bride.
I might have. Till this year.
Yes. And he didn't have a chance to look entirely shocked before she said this year, and then he put up his hand so she could high-five him that
I had finally seen it.
So, yes, we had a good time
40s.
with which we'll come back to being in your 40s, but I have to say that everybody was really cool and friendly, and they are consummate professionals as celebrities in that they indulged us all in anything we wanted to talk about. And Chris Sarandon was very measured and thoughtful, and much like I even told him that on the Blu-ray, his commentary I found to be some of the most insightful, and I wanted to see the rest of the interview, and he said, I don't know where that is. So I think he's hunting for it now, trying to find the rest of that interview, and it was from 15 years ago. So
That's
I hope
right.
he finds it
Chris
and lets me know.
assistant. Get on that.
That's right, Chris Sarandon's assistant, whoever you may be. So, but I have a feeling
whatever awesome person you are.
And probably much more well-treated than many of the assistants I knew in L.A. that would be in tears when I would see them. So.
They were also nice.
Yeah.
It was really like, oh, hey, let's go grab a beer, all right?
And Elwes actually came around from behind his table to get a picture. First of all, he had his own little, separated tent area. It was all curtained off. And he was the only one, and he was separated inside for a more intimate experience.
How many other of those celebrities do you think want their own little?
Oh, all of them, I'm sure.
God, it's like you're in the desert. Like, this is how I want to equate it. You're in the desert, and you're the only one that has a tent. That's pretty much how everybody felt.
And the sandstorm is tens of
Whipping
thousands
around
of
you.
rabid fans who want to ask you a million questions, of which you may not be able to answer most of them because you didn't write some fan fiction version of the film that happens 10 years later.
Sure. Sure.
But,
that's my short answer.
But yes, Carrie Elwes was very cool. He came around. First of all, he signed in two places in his book, one being on the special picture inside the dust jacket, which I had not even seen.
Of the hardcover.
Yes, of the hardcover. I didn't even realize it was there.
Tips for folks going to cons where Carrie Elwes is.
Yes, he signed in the book and he signed there. And then for the picture, he came around and started to remove Joelle's backpack for her. He was like, let's just get this off so we can, get closer in the picture. And just the look on your face when you realized, oh my God, Carrie Elwes is taking my backpack off. He's assisting me in taking my backpack was a priceless moment.
Well, I don't know. I was a little flabbergasted because I'm not quite sure what to say. At first I thought it was you, and then I recognized that it was him, and I'm like, what is happening right now?
Yep.
But it was great. He was really great. Sean Wallace, Wallace Shawn, his whole conversation was awesome too.
Yeah.
You thought like I was 5.
Well, that's where the age part comes back in again, is that...
okay, maybe not 5.
16, though.
25.
He went as low as 16. Like, he kept reducing the age. And
I think that's just for comedic effect. I obviously don't look like I'm 16.
Perhaps. And, I would love to recount the story in character voice, but I'm not going to do Wallace Shawn the disservice of attempting his voice, because his voice is so much of who he is in all of his characters, and yet maintaining a separation and a difference to those characters with such a similar voice. It's astounding. But when we were talking to him, we were talking about you never having seen The Princess Bride. You said, and I'm in my 40s. And he looked just gobsmacked. He just stared for a minute at you and said, if you're 41, then I'm 101.
So ridiculous.
He's like, I thought you were 25. I thought you were 16. It kept moving down. But yes, he was just thunderstruck at how good you look. So I had to point out that you're Chinese, Jamaican, and those are two peoples who age well. And he thought that was pretty funny.
That's right. The black don't crack. Just saying.
Yes, indeed. But yes, all very cool. We had a lot of fun with everyone at MegaCon, and we're going to talk more about some of the people we met next week. But we did want to mention we saw a couple of amazing vendors there.
Shout outs.
Yes, one of them was incredible. Ransom Designs.
Oh my God, I can't. They're amazing.
You near lost your mind the minute you spotted this booth.
So everybody needs to look it up right now. Ransom, like I'm holding you for ransom, designs.com. Or they're on Insta. Just check them out.
Yes, Jess and Kyle. They're very cool.
Jess and Kyle, super cool people.
And what they do is they take vintage letters from...
they recycle...
So they're upcycled vintage signs. But what they do that's awesome is when they put the new plastic in... they put on a graphic of your favorite sci-fi, fantasy fandoms of all kinds. Star Wars, Star Trek, Harry Potter.
Oh gosh, there's so many. Even with a quote, Stranger Things.
Yeah, some Stranger Things.
So basically our little E is now an 11 sign.
Yes.
Which is pretty freaking awesome. It's a picture of 11 on an E.
And of course, they plug in and light up. So they're a real centerpiece that can go on your wall or your table or whatever. But they are amazing and super, super friendly folks.
They are. And so, of course, we bought some.
Yeah.
Because they're amazing.
Yes.
And they custom design it for you. They'll work with you. So that's also equally amazing because, I love things that are customized.
And those are unlike anything we've seen anywhere. And another really unique item we saw was from Hero Squares. That was Drew. And unfortunately, we have forgotten his spouse's name. But Drew at Hero Squares makes album covers. And they are for non-existent albums, but they're
parody album covers, basically.
Yes.
So they'll take... like a movie or a TV show like Breaking Bad, and literally it'll be an album cover parody of, Walter White or Heisenberg, right?
Or they had George McFly's 1955 poetry collection.
Exactly.
But what he does is he ages some of them so it looks like one you would have bought at a garage sale or at a library sale. It'll even have a imitation, like a sticker that says it's from a certain library, and they're just really, really well done and a lot of fun, and I think we bought like a dozen of them.
Something like that. Very close.
And he does pins and is going to get into enamel pins.
Yeah, he has a Kickstarter.
Yes, of which I don't know what the Kickstarter is.
I think if you go ahead and you look up Hero Squares, and then you'll be able to go ahead and see it too.
Okay. But anyway, those were a couple of the great folks that we met and some really cool stuff that they're making. And we're going to mention a couple more people next week. But we want to be sure that we have plenty of time to talk about our movie this week. And I think we alluded to this a few weeks ago. We may have said something in one podcast that we were going to do something sort of weird and dark. And then we went to Ruthless People, which was...
The Crystal.
Indeed, The Crystal.
I was letting you keep talking over it, like. Hey.
Oh, you were going to be my narration?
Yeah, basically.
Nice. I've always wanted narration.
I don't think you'd ever allow narration because you talk so fucking
I'm
much.
my own narration? Is that what you're saying?
You are your own fucking narration. I don't even think I could have like a theme song as you walk because you're talking.
Well, maybe am I one of the few only children who talks to myself?
You're not an only child.
The few non-only children I meant.
Like you're not an only child.
No, sorry, Andrea. I didn't mean that.
Exactly, Andrea.
I
Jesus.
do recognize you as my sister, and you are you are not.
I got your back, Andrea. That's all you need to know. I got your back. Jesus.
I meant as not an only child talking to my sister will vouch that I talk to myself and would act out movie scenes by myself.
I mean, I would talk to myself, but I'm an only child. I still talk to myself and answer myself. But I mean, I grew up by myself, so I had awesome ass conversations all the time.
I bet you did.
I
actually.
did. Yeah.
Still do.
I still do. It's great. My best friend and you can attest to when I'm talking to myself and you're like, "What, Joe?" And I'm like, No. I was talking to myself, trying to work something out.
Yes.
It happens. But yes, on to dun dun dun. The Dark Crystal.
Indeed. Yes. The Dark
very
Crystal,
dark.
which is really The Dark Crystal was the first movie, one of the first movies we watched for this early on. We actually watched it a little while back and we saw it in the theater. They were
3 months back.
Yes. And they were having, it was for the anniversary. They were showing it in the theater. And so we went to go see it.
No.
What I failed to do.
Let's fucking rewind. Parry says, "Hey, let's go ahead and do the Dark Crystal for the podcast because I know you haven't seen it. Have you seen it? No. Oh, it's a Jim Henson movie. Oh, okay. I'll go see it, I guess. I mean, I love Fraggle Rock. I love Sesame Street. Okay. The Muppets, sometimes I can give or take. I know I'm going to get a lot of fucking hate mail for that. But overall, like, I really enjoy Fraggle Rock and Sesame Street. So Jim Henson, cool. I'm in. Let's go."
You did enjoy meeting Jason Segel, though, and talking about the Muppets a little bit.
Sure. But I was like, let's go to this wonderfully awesome, lighthearted, down at Fraggle Rock moment. Great.
Well, there
And
wasn't
then
any
he
music
fucking
in
takes me to the goddamn Dark Crystal. And I literally looked at him within the first 10 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? What happened? There's no other way to say it, folks. I'm sorry, all my family that's listening right now. I'm cursing like a sailor because what the hell? I was expecting Happy Sunshine, Fraggle Rock, Sesame Street, and I got M&F and Skeksis.
The movie actually hadn't even started when she freaked out. It was the little documentary at the beginning that's telling you, hey, this is some, flashback to the making of, and here's how it was. And she just turns to me, and I just know. I don't even have to look at her face. I just know. And she says, "What the fuck is this?"
Pretty much.
And admittedly, that was sort of her reaction at the end of the film as well. However... Well,
I think we need to go back. Can we just do the freaking synopses first? Like, we have a structure of the program. I'm type A. Let's go to structure. Do you have a synopses written?
I was segueing into the structure.
Oh my fucking God. I'm going to grow so much gray hair by the time you segue into the structure.
That's what hair dye is for.
No, but go ahead. Go ahead,
Thank
mister.
you, Vanessa.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say was... now I've forgotten.
Old age is a bitch. Hey.
And I keep proving you right.
Old age.
What I was going to say was that we have found ourselves repeatedly over the last couple of months bringing it up again and again. And we try not to talk about the movies we're going to review because we want genuine reactions from each other. So we try not to, rehearse it or discuss it. But it kept coming up again and again, both from us and from other people. Like there was a great post from Jean Grey, the fantastic hip-hop artist, who wrote when Beyonce performed at Coachella, someone was up really late watching it and they said, "How am I going to make it tomorrow?" And she wrote, "You just need to siphon off some power from Beyonce like the Skeksis did."
Some life force.
Yes, some life force energy. And so it was like, whoa, there it is again, the Dark Crystal. And, we started asking people about it and put it out on our Facebook pages and got some really interesting response about it. So even though the reactions that Joelle might have come out of it with, and me too, because it was a lot weirder than I remembered as a kid. With some time to marinate and really think on it, I think it's taken on some new and different meanings for us.
Great. And now to the synopsis.
The synopsis. Well,
Do you have it written down?
we were a little busy with cons,
Oh,
so
Lord. I have a synopsis written down.
I have a synopsis in my head.
Okay, go for it.
So, there is a planet and a crystal. No.
The crystal.
So, we get a little voiceover at the beginning that gives us some context to this, but basically there is a crystal in a castle, and the castle is inhabited by the Skeksis, which are a very vile and kind of evil race, and they have decimated this planet pretty much, and except for some sections, and in one of those parts, the mystics, or the Uru, as they are also known, live, and with them lives a gelfling, thought to be the last of his kind, Jen. And
This is a synopsis.
Yes.
Like 4 lines.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
go.
getting there.
Go.
So basically, the planet is in trouble. The crystal is
Fractured.
There is a shard missing. And the only way to sort of bring order back to the planet and keep the Skeksis or evil from ruling forever is to put the shard back into the crystal and restore the balance. And that's what the film is about Jen's journey to find the shard and put it back in the crystal.
Yes. Mine is much shorter. Do you want to hear?
Yes, please.
So there are always 2 sides to every person, good and evil, wise and selfish. 2 sides to every coin, so to speak. So the dark crystal is about what would happen to humanity if it was split in 2. And those who are actually evil, would they know to be any different other than to be evil? Like, it's inherent within their nature. That's what the movie's about.
I was gonna sum up with similar things, but that kind of sounds like their Two-Face.
A little bit.
Yes,
A little bit.
Harvey Dent and then Two-Face.
Yep. So it's really what would happen to all of humanity if we split those 2 sides to your personality.
It's a very yin and yang concept.
Oh, well, there's a whole lot more concepts happening that you don't even know about.
Well, I think it does what the best of sci-fi does, which is take something that is very close to humanity, but removes it from the context of our own personal biases and sides that we've taken over the years, and puts it in a different place in different beings, and therefore it forces us to look in a mirror at what we are on the inside, but we're, like I said, we're not colored and blinded by flags or nations or colors or things like that tend to skew our view when we're looking at it here in our everyday reality. And that's what really, to me, the best of sci-fi and fantasy are able to do, is make us go, oh, I see what they're saying here, and yeah, it's so very true. And maybe helping people to recognize that in themselves and address that.
Yeah, I agree. And Henson definitely had that in mind. There are so many layers right now. I can't even. I don't even want to give it all away.
It is a true onion of a movie. It has many, many layers, and even though the basic plot of the journey is very simple and very done, and it actually shares a lot of similar DNA to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in terms of that epic journey, but there's everything out there from the Odyssey to the journey is a big theme in
I feel like when
fiction.
when I talk about when we get to production notes, you'll even be more enlightened, quote unquote. But so your favorite quote, the reason for our podcast title?
Yes, my favorite quote in this particular one is when they are talking about, there's always a prophecy in these movies, and I kind of get tired of prophecies. I feel like, why do they always have to give away who's going to fulfill the prophecy? Because that usually means someone is going to want to kill them, whether we're, talking about Star Wars or this. The prophecy is a big one in this, and I really liked a line in it where Jen is talking to Kira, who is a female gelfling that he finds along the way, realizing that he is not alone. There is one more, which means potential repopulation of the gelfling race. And Jen says, the prophecy didn't say anything about this. And Kira responds, prophets don't know everything.
Okay, that's a pretty good one. I have a Jen and Kira one too.
Yes.
So Jen says, wings? I don't have wings. And Kira says, of course not. You're a boy.
That was a great line. Yes.
Just saying.
Yes, I like that a lot.
I like that too.
So she had some Red Bull?
That's a bad joke.
It's terrible.
That's an
You're
awful
absolutely
joke.
right. It's horrific. So, but yes, I thought that was a really cool extra feature of Kira, was that she did have that extra. Not only did she add that, she had the ability to speak with animals. She could call them to come and help them, and she does on a number of occasions, like with the land striders.
So, I mean, you've alluded to a couple of scenes that I think might be your favorites, but putting all the weirdness aside, because I will really admit it took me a lot to get over the weirdness. And you have to remember, I'm not seeing it, not the story. The story is innately great. The general gist, the story, the message, I get it. I get why the Skeksis had to be so ugly. Like, I understand all of those things logically. I just don't know if it was a kid's film. It was a little dark.
It was
like dark.
It
like,
was.
what drugs were you on, Jim Henson? Dark.
It was a kids' film in 1983.
It was a kids'
films
film
were
in
different
1980.
then.
A little bit, and I mean, so he wanted to go like more dark side, like old school Grimm's fairy tales, like why can't kids be scared type thing.
Right.
And I understand that. And yes, like we have the Jabberwocky like in Alice in Wonderland, right? Because that's pretty freaking dark. But that's like one moment out of the whole thing. But like most of this, I would say like 80% of this is, dude, they're on the run. They have some crazy ass Skeksis weirdness happening. Or it's just really weird. Now, the puppetry is brilliant.
Are we doing good, bad, and ugly now?
No. I was just saying overall so that everybody knows that I'm not down on Jim Henson or Frank Oz or any of the folks really involved in this project. I actually think that there's so many layers to this. Like we can't even possibly peel them all in this podcast. And there is complete brilliance behind a lot of what they did, and simple brilliance, which is why I think it's been able to stay the course for so long. But initially, I was like, what is happening? Like, I had the big wide eyes. Like, why are we here? And I'm not sure I understand this. You saw this as a child? That's sort of what was going through my head when you were showing it to me.
Admittedly, even though I was around 10 when it came out, I don't remember it scaring me, but I liked weird stuff, and so I had a real taste for that.
Yeah, you did.
But I don't remember it being quite as disturbing and vicious as it is in the scenes with the Skeksis, especially when they strip Skeksis. Oh shoot, which is his?
Chamberlain.
Yes,
the general and Chamberlain fight after the Emperor dies, and they strip Chamberlain because he loses. And banish him.
And they strip him violently of his clothes.
Yeah,
and
they tear him off.
And there's a lot of shrieking, like bird-like shrieking that is really disturbing. And I was sort of cringing in the seat at the theater. And I'm the one who took people to go and see Requiem for a Dream. Like, I took lots of friends and just through the whole thing was like, yes, it makes me feel something. Therefore, it's great. And I'm bringing you all to see it. And everyone else was in a fetal position. But seeing The Dark Crystal kind of made me feel like those friends that I took to see Requiem.
I guess this is our warning label. If you have not seen The Dark Crystal yet, there is awesomeness in it. I think listening to this podcast might actually be better for you, because you might actually go in prepared to see the craziness and awesomeness simultaneously that is The Dark Crystal. But it was definitely odd. I was like, dude, why are they trusting the fate of the entire fucking world to this like teenager? Like, what the hell is happening?
Who they've only just told. They have had 1,000 years to tell him what's going
Isn't that
on.
1,000 years, really?
Well,
No, he's young. He's not 1,000 years old.
Well, they killed the Gelflings though earlier because you saw their civilization had fallen into ruin.
You're right. But he wasn't like, I don't know, in the scheme of things, he was young.
I think they all age very slowly because it starts out 1,000 years ago.
Oh, interesting.
And so I think the way that the creatures age in it, I don't know about like the podlings or any of the other creatures in the film, but the Skeksis, the Uru, and the Gelflings definitely age at a much slower rate.
And then you definitely have moments like where Jen and Kira are trying to get away, and then they start singing together. And I'm like, what the shit is that?
You had to have one Muppety moment in there.
I know, but I don't think that that's the appropriate Muppety moment.
Well, they were trying to keep a low profile, and they do get caught because they're out having a serenade sing
like,
on
hey,
the creek.
Let's have a sing along.
And the crystal bats, which are like drones because they have a camera in them, and they get spotted by the crystal bat.
It was weird. So,
well, you didn't even mention probably one of the things that disturbed you the most, which was when the Chamberlain gets stripped. He has like these weird nipple, it's hard to see in it, but it kind of looks like genitalia on his nipple area, and I would use,
I had really blocked that out till right now. I had blocked that out, and I don't know how we're going back to it now. It's gonna give me nightmares.
I have to quote Adam and Ben from The Greatest Generation when they always say from Star Trek VI, not everyone keeps their genitals in the same place. So,
but I don't need to see their genitals. It's a kid's movie.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be showing genitalia.
They also, and you can't really see it in the film, but this is a production note, but I'm giving it early. They actually have 4 arms, and 2 of them are under their shoulder blades. So they're actually little arms and hands, and there's a reason for that. And we'll talk about that in the production notes as to why those were included.
That's so crazy. So yeah, let's sum up our thoughts. This was total crack. I'm not sure why I'm in this theater with Parry. I want to walk out. This is beyond weird. They pretty much forcibly assault one of their own kind, the Skeksis do. And the mystics, the wise ones, trust the fate of the entire planet to this teenage gelfling. So it's a big WTF all around, pretty much.
Well, and the Skeksis are, of course, supposed to be just vile to the core, and that is the nature of what they are. And we'll talk a little bit about what they represent, of course. And then the mystics, or the Uru, are very earthy. I think they were very Native American inspired in their feel and the ceremonies that they're doing and the chants and things. I think were taken from native peoples all over the world.
I like how you think that that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have other theories.
That we research different areas, and
yes.
So, that's a theory, or that was research?
I have research.
Okay.
But okay.
See, this is always fun when we have different bits of research.
So I don't talk to him. I'm just kidding.
Ever.
Other than this podcast. No, that's so not true. God, we talk so much. But exactly. But I will say this, for those who love this movie, they adore this movie.
Yes.
It is like their favorite movie. My best friend was like, what do you mean you don't like this movie? I'm like, I don't know. It kind of wigged me out. She's like, no, this is the best movie. I love this movie. My brothers love this movie. My mom loved this movie. We all love this movie. We watch this movie so many times. We own blah, blah, blah special edition because there are about a bajillion different types out there. If you don't know, now you know. Every anniversary they come out with a new edition. It's sort of like The Princess Bride that way. And they're in love with it. And those who watched it when they were little and thought it was weird, they still kind of think it's weird.
Well, and the following must be big enough because it's
huge.
They are producing new items around it. There's a game that has come out, like a board game.
You've like jumped the ship. You've gone to cultural relevance. You've jumped the ship.
Okay, then I'm not sure where we are.
We're at Good, Bad, and the Ugly.
Okay.
There we are.
Excellent.
So you're good, mister?
World building. I feel like that the story, again, though fairly simple and straightforward, the world that was built for the film,
So
and
visually or the story?
the world itself, in terms
Visually.
of, yes, in terms of having a richly textured set of societies, and each one having its own different look and feel, and seeing different parts of this planet, and therefore you feel like this is an actual place with actual living beings, and you can accept, you suspend your disbelief. Of course, there are places where there are very obviously puppets, like the podlings look Muppet-like. But again, I feel like they just really fleshed out the world that they set out to create, and I feel like that vision was made very much a reality.
I agree.
And
I
that's
totally
not
agree.
always easy to do.
No. I think visually it's pretty stunning. I think that they pull off exactly what they wanted to pull off.
All right, so we were talking about the good.
Sure. Oh, my good.
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
Yes.
Fizzgig! Fizzgig
Yes.
is my good.
The cross between a dog and a lion.
It's sort of like the best of a dog, but kind of like a cat.
And I think they described him as a boyfriend blocker. Because they wanted
That sounds like a cat.
They didn't want him to be like they described it as like Miss Piggy has a poodle so that they can show that she has a nurturing side, but they didn't want to go with something so sweet and cute, and so they wanted something that was a little tougher looking for Kira.
Well, I mean, I think his personality was a little tougher. Like he was like, I don't like you, rah, which is really like a cat.
Yep,
So
boyfriend
Fizzgig,
blocker.
it's not really a puppy or a dog. It's a dog and a cat put together. More cat.
And Fizzgig makes a special appearance in one episode of Fraggle Rock
Down
as
at
well.
Fraggle Rock.
Yep, he's in the background in one of the episodes.
This is why I like Fizzgig as my good.
Yes.
No, I'm just kidding. No, Fizzgig really is my good, but I think a lot of it is just the puppetry in general. I mean, Henson and Co. were so ahead of their time in the design and the puppetry, what those folks had to do. I think Henson himself only could wear the Mystic costume for 5 to 10 seconds to hold a frame because it was just so heavy, and the way that you had to contort yourself to move the mouth and to carry the entire costume was crazy. And I know that's sort of a production note, but that really is the good in this, is that the technology for the time was so ahead of itself. And you can tell that it was very passionate work.
Yeah. To watch people push the envelope that way of what was possible at the time with the technology, and because no one would attempt that now. They would do digital.
No, or you see like multiple people in the so there's like the person in the costume, that's the actual character. Then there's the voice, then there's another person working the other side of the costume.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have like 2 and 3 people in like one costume.
Yes.
And then they're surrounded by other people in other costumes. So it's literally a cluster of people at any given time, even in like the smallest of scenes.
Yeah. Operating all of these very complex puppets and making them move in very natural ways.
Yes. So natural that they originally didn't have any vocals. Anyway, no, you can go to that. So what's your bad?
My bad, I really would have liked to have seen a little more personality in Jen. I know that they wanted him to be innocent, like he had never been exposed to all of these horrible things, and that he was truly childlike, even though he had been around for, however long. And, when they're sending him on the journey, it's like his master is dying, and he's like, oh, by the way, you got to do all this stuff, and maybe I should have told you sooner. It's like, yeah, maybe you should have spent a couple 100 years preparing Jen for what he needs to do, instead of like the day before all darkness is supposed to fall.
Another world.
But maybe Jen was like that kid that won't leave home, and he's like,
Another time.
look, man, you've been living at home for like 992 years, and maybe it's time you got a place of your own.
The crystal.
Da-na-na-na-na. That's a production note we have to talk about.
Another world.
I'm
so stuck.
So yeah, I also think that maybe, at least in some early roles, Keanu Reeves may have based his entire personality on Jen the Gelfling.
Okay, that's possible. That's totally possible. Hey, Keanu, or people that know Keanu, was Jen his favorite Gelfling?
Well, there were only two.
Well, I'm just saying. Was he aware of Jen the Gelfling?
Because there's a lot of similarity in delivery. There's one line he says at one point. Oh, yeah, and the haircut. So,
Keanu's hairdresser.
Keanu has evolved, but he may need to watch some Jen before he goes to film Bill and Ted 3.
The crystal.
Are you like the Oscars music that comes up to
Pretty
push
much.
me off the stage so that I'll shut the hell up?
You're welcome, folks. You're welcome. Providing services for the last 3 years.
Yes,
as your wife.
The episode where we begin to let Joelle talk more.
Stop it.
Not where Joelle starts talking more.
Sometimes. I'm caffeinated today. I can't really help it. And I'm hungry and I want to eat. So there's food waiting for us. So, there's a lot of different things. Not that I don't want to spend time with you all, quality time, but we're only on like page 1 out of 2 of things to cover. So moving along. My bad. I'm not down with those Skeksis being so just vile. I think sometimes when you show them as being so vile, that's what you expect. But I almost would have preferred a prettier package in a way. So these were visually vile, right? So the Skeksis were based off of a painting, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the artist right now.
Froud.
There you go. Thank you.
Who actually...
with alligators, right?
Yeah, worked on the film. Henson befriended him and they worked together on
right,
this.
To go ahead and work on the look of the Skeksis. But it's almost like, hey, these people are going to be like their inside matches their outside. But the reality of that is that oftentimes their inside doesn't match their outside or vice versa. So it's sort of, while the Mystics, were old and sort of lopey and, they knew everything, like they were like Snuffleupagus, right?
They were kind of like Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, they were like Mr. Snuffleupagus. And
except people could see them.
But the Skeksis were like, these just vile, horrible things. So I guess I just wish we had taught the lesson, even the pretty package sometimes is evil.
I think you make an excellent point, really, that, yeah, it's so true that we almost unconsciously, whether it's from media training or something that's inherent in our primal nature, we do tend to look at pretty people and assume that they are as good on the inside. And often they're not, because they've gotten so much privilege from how they look. And this is not a blanket statement, but more often than not, and living where we do, we see a tremendous amount of it. And having lived in LA, I saw a tremendous amount of it where people got a lot of leeway and a lot of just had an extra in for money and power and all kinds of different things because they were attractive. And often they used that very much to their advantage and were much darker on the inside. So I think you're right. That would have been a really great message to tell.
Yeah, just sometimes, your package isn't who you are. It's okay. I mean, we're obviously learning that now in politics. Celebrity presidents are bad. Yeah, I'm leaving that in. We should definitely leave that in.
I'm not cutting that.
Just saying, if you don't know who we are by now, maybe you should listen to another podcast or listen to this one and open your mind a little bit.
Oh, so good. Anyone who's been writing that I'm virtue signaling for all the things I've said about race and gender in the podcast, now they can have their assumptions confirmed.
Oh, they're totally confirmed. If they look us up, it would be automatically confirmed. So ugly. What's your ugly? See how I got us back on track there?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do something a little different this time. I am going to do like a Minority Report future crime, in that we have a possible ugly. And that is that some stories are self-contained. They don't require anything more. And though we're always curious, we always want to know more. Like, I wanted to see Better Call Saul and how it filled in the gaps leading up to Breaking Bad, and I loved Rogue One. And so prequel stories, origin stories can really do a great service, but they can also do a great disservice. And I have some misgivings about the prequel series that is going to be coming out from Netflix pretty soon here, which is, I think it's called The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance.
Yes, that's right.
And there's not much out there about it at this point, so I am not giving an informed opinion. I'm just saying that might be an ugly. And it's not something that...
That's not an ugly about this film, though.
No, but...
No. Are you afraid of that Jim Henson hate mail? I don't understand. I mean,
Yes.
I don't blame you.
I'm afraid of, yes.
I don't blame you.
Of the power of the Muppet Empire.
It's pretty powerful.
You don't know the power.
I mean, it cuts pretty deep.
Yes.
Okay, so the prequel. You're just...
I am segueing into production notes.
Okay, but I still need to give my ugly.
Oh, okay.
You can't segue that quickly, mister.
You do your ugly.
I will do my ugly. So my ugly is that, and admittedly, I think everybody sort of knows this, and when Parry talks about production notes, it'll be even more apparent. There is a definite disjointedness in relation to the narration, in relation to what the puppets say, because of the way the production happened and because of what their own production notes were and things that they had to correct. So sadly, we've now created this crazy, weird, beautiful world that only could have happened when you're on drugs. So I mean, I'm not disparaging it. I'm just saying I don't feel like everyday folks would automatically assume about this world. But anyway, so you have this crazy, awesome visual world. Let me not sidetrack myself. But the story is very disjointed. And sadly, whether or not you're the biggest fan of it, you feel it. You feel like, well, why is that going in there? Or why is that type of dialogue going in there? And some of it, they did a pretty good job after the fact, considering that there really wasn't any English dialogue.
Not originally.
Not originally, right?
Or very, very little. I think Jen and Kira
Right.
spoke English, but...
and it was just supposed to be all subtitles.
Right. Well,
or nothing.
Especially for the Skeksis and the Uru,
Yes.
the mystics, is that they all spoke a language that was kind of a combination of several. I think it was like Serbian and a couple of others that were mashed together, but we'll get there.
You're going to get there right now. So this just leads straight into your production notes. But that's the only thing, sadly, is that I wish they would have had the foresight to understand that maybe everyone couldn't understand what they were trying to accomplish with their original run. So that's my ugly, is that their vision doesn't exactly all match up. It matches up pretty well, but you're still just missing that last part.
And that is that's a compromise that often has to occur in Hollywood, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, because sometimes when there's no one around to tell a director, no, this is not working, sometimes you get things that are way too inside of their own head and their own interest, and no one really can see it the same way that they can. On the other hand, often a lot of studio heads and producers are less worried about vision and are more concerned with profit, and so they want to change things because they want more people to go and pay for it, to see it. And sometimes that totally ruins a great film. And so
you really need to look at it twofold, right? So there always has to be a reason why you're making it, and it's not just always just to make your vision, right? You want to make your vision so that other people see it, and so other people can understand and gain your perspective. But if you're making something that's not your target market audience attainable, then that makes no sense.
And that's where you have to walk a fine line, is you want to elevate people's consciousness, but you also don't want to go so far above their heads that they just aren't willing to follow you on the journey all the way to the conclusion.
Right.
And I think that was the problem they were having, was that people were rejecting the test audience. And I had a friend who used to have a great line. He used to say, test audiences are ruining my life, even though he didn't make films. He was just like, oh, it would have had such a better ending if the test audience hadn't ruined it. But in this case, a test audience really rejected it, and they couldn't get past how much they were disliking it to really get the message at the end.
They were working just way too hard. There was like not really any dialogue, or it was like subtitles. Like, you're making the audience work too hard for a kid film, which has a message, right? So if that's truly what you're trying to do, you're making the audience work way too hard. And they hated it.
Yeah.
They didn't just dislike it. They hated it so much that the original production company that were supposed to put it out, they didn't.
Right.
They had to sell it.
Yeah, Henson ended up buying it back.
Yes.
With his own money.
Yes.
Which is funny because one of his production partners Henson apparently did not want to market Sesame Street and some of his other properties, because he was like, that's not what this is about. It's not making money off of stuffed animals and things like that. But the guy encouraged him to do it because then he could squirrel the money away for his own projects later. And Henson was reminded of this whenever he basically had to put all of the spare cash he had on hand, it was like, I don't know, $15 million or something, into buying it back so that they could put it out there under a different production company and actually advertise it more, because the company that had it was not going to really promote it.
Exactly. And you reminded me, at the beginning of production notes, I always give the rundown. So let me do that really quick.
Oh, yes.
Dark Crystal, 1982, directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz, produced by Jim Henson and Gary Kurtz, screenplay by David Odell, story by Jim Henson, music by Trevor Jones, cinematography Oswald Morris, edited by Ralph Kemplin. So the release date for New York was December 13th, 82. December 17th was United States release. February 17th, 83 was the UK. Running time is 93 minutes. The budget initially was $13 million and was increased to $25 million during production, and it made for a little over 40, almost $41 million at the box office. Rotten Tomatoes, critics give it a 74%, and audience gives it an 81%. So, not bad. They made some money at the box office, but truly they have made money after the box office.
Yes, and again, it continues to enjoy popularity to the point where Funko even makes pops from the film of Kira and Fizzgig and Jen and a couple of the others. So if it's gotten to the point where you've got a pop, you're still popular.
Yes, completely. And especially with the sequel on Netflix coming out, it's like, man, you are really getting all those 80s kids.
Yes. Yeah. Funny story about pop. At MegaCon, when we saw the panel, which was Mitch Pileggi, who was Skinner, and William B. Davis, who is a cigarette smoking man, and Annabeth Gish, they were joking because the only one of them that had a pop was cigarette smoking man, and it's Scully and Mulder and an alien are the only other three. And Pileggi was like, I don't have a pop, and William B. Davis was like, what do you mean you don't have a pop? I've got a pop. He's like, I don't have one. So we had him sign a picture because we didn't have a pop for him to sign.
If you don't have a pop, you're nothing.
Oh, Pileggi might be listening to this. He's awesome.
He is awesome. I'm just fucking with him. I think he'd appreciate it personally.
Yeah, I think he would.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, I don't have a pop. Shit. I think I'm pretty damn special.
I think we can make you a pop.
I think you're pretty damn special, too.
Oh, thanks.
But you sort of look like Clark Kent, so that's your pop. They don't really have Chinese Jamaican pops.
Well, they should.
I mean, they did make a pop for me. It's called Wonder Woman.
Yes.
There you go. But back to production notes. So what else you got?
Well, the thing about the language was interesting because they went to a lot of trouble to create this language. and just didn't work out well with people, and they ended up cutting about 20 minutes from the film overall, which is why it feels a little choppy and disjointed in places, because there's chunks missing. Interesting. Oh shoot, damn it,
Janet. So, on a side note, Jim Henson, while creating this film, made everybody read the Seth material. Do you know what the Seth material is, Barry?
I should.
Okay. So Jane Roberts basically dictated all of this material to her husband from like 1963 to like 84. And essentially, it's one of the cornerstones of New Age philosophy. And she would go into trances, and she would be this other person called Seth.
Oh yeah, I did read this.
Okay, and Seth has theories, and he's a teacher, and like the conscience creates matter, and the only thing you can impact is the present moment. Does this sound familiar, folks?
This is why Henson's ashes are buried in Taos, New Mexico.
They're spread.
Yep.
So, and like reincarnation and karma and past lives and guardian spirits and higher consciousness, right? So there's all this hippy dippy craziness, but Henson made those who were going to be working on the film read the Seth material. So he was like all about this too. And he, like, you want to think he's a little crazy and a little far off for necessarily subscribing to this. But then you read who are all of the followers of the Seth material and sort of like disciples, I guess, if you will, of the Seth material. So it's self-help gurus like Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra and Shaki Gwain. I think I'm mispronouncing that. And Louise Hay and all of those awesome feely tape people that tell you that you reflect your consciousness reflects what you're interested in and what you're doing, and thinking matters, and creating your own space, and there's this other worldliness and karma, and preaching this whole new ageism, which is essentially the entire fucking film. I hope your mind is blown. I hope your mind is blown.
It is very much what the film is, and where I would say that does work is when you get everyone in the film maybe not subscribing to the same philosophy.
Oh, they were subscribing.
Well, when you get everyone on the same page with something like that, you do tend to get a certain atmosphere because everyone is working toward the same goal of accomplishing that feel and that message. And I think that really does show through in Dark Crystal, that you really do feel
crystally.
Yes, you do feel very crystally. You're
very
right.
Dreamcatchery. Very Dreamcatchery. You two can come together and we can join forces and you will be the life force of it all.
It's a power crystal.
And
yes,
you can have wings if you want to, Kira. Talk to animals.
Well,
you can do this.
The interesting thing is that originally it did not involve a crystal.
The crystal.
When Brian Froud originally brought some concept
crystal
drawings over to Henson was like, I don't even know what you're showing me. And he was like, the crystal.
The crystal.
Well, Henson had originally been calling it the dark chrysalis. And Froud had misunderstood. And he wanted the chrysalis to be like, it was representing what was kind of covering the planet and in terms of like the shroud of darkness. And it worked out though, because he really liked the idea of a crystal and incorporated it into the screenplay.
You're so welcome. Every time you say crystal, I'm just going to say the crystal.
Every time someone says crystal, take a drink.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh no, they'd be drunk. That's irresponsible. I hope you're not driving and drinking. Thank you.
No, that's true. People often listen to these on their way to or from work. But if you just happen to be at home all day listening to podcasts, please feel welcome to do some shots.
Another time. Sorry, I can't. Any more production notes with Parry? I think we went over a lot of the production notes, quite honestly, and some of our good, bad. We talked about world building. We talked about puppetry and how advanced that was. The crystal. We talked about, that's for you alcoholics out there. what else is there to talk about? We talked about how weird it was.
Well, those secondary arms that I was talking about.
Okay, secondary arms. There you go.
Yeah, they were actually put there by Froud to separate the Skeksis from similar creatures he had designed in an early book, which was part of the inspiration for the film.
Another world.
And it was for copyright reasons, so that he would keep the copyright to the original creatures, but Henson's film company would have the ownership of the Skeksis image, and those little arms were part of what set them apart, was the fact that they had 4 arms total. You were talking earlier about the costumes, and it's actually kind of cool that Froud was fascinated with lobsters, and that's how he came up with the Gartham.
Oh, well,
he liked gluing the pieces together for inspiration.
Well, it's the lobsters that he and Jim Henson would have for dinner, and that's how he came up with it, like this fiberglass concept.
The costumes were so incredibly heavy that they would have to suspend the actors on a rig to relax in between takes. And honestly, those do look like they're in the film, almost look like they're being suspended on something when they're being filmed. There's a way that they're moving that looks like maybe they're not quite touching the ground, which gives them sort of an eerie, even darker quality. Those little swirling legs they have underneath, because they're so crab-like, but they look like something darker and more vicious. So I thought that the design of those particular costumes was extremely interesting.
I agree.
I also thought it was extremely interesting that the cinematographer, Oswald Morris, this was his last film and before he retired, but he has one hell of a filmography. I mean, he has done everything. Well, he did a lot of stuff with Henson. He did The Great Muppet Caper. And, okay, so just one other thing with Henson. But he also did The Man with the Golden Gun, The Wiz, the 1970 version of Scrooge, Goodbye Mr. Chips, Oliver, The Guns of the Navarone, The Entertainer, Our Man in Havana, Look Back in Anger. I mean, it just goes on and on. A Farewell to Arms. His career as a cinematographer was amazing. And this film does look gorgeous. And this is back in the era where doing post-effects to film was very difficult. So, you would try and shoot effects as you wanted to see them on the film, as opposed to, doing it in post as we do predominantly at this point. But he used something called a light flex to give the film sort of a fantasy quality. It tints the film a bit, and it gives it just it filters the light and tints the film and gives it just a little bit of a fantasy quality look. And the film really does have that, so he really accomplished that well. So it was a nice parting gift to all of us.
Exactly. It helped the Skeksis look so much better. It's exactly it. You've got it so much.
It gives the Skeksis a dreamy, if not nightmarish, quality.
Nightmarish. Oh, speaking of nightmarish.
Don't the Skeksis kind of sound like an STD? Like, if Kira was talking about the Skeksis, do you think he'd be like, yeah, I got to go, take this crystal shard thing now. I'll see you around.
No, it just sounds like drugs. I mean, this whole thing is like drugs. But what we did not do, which is interesting, is we did not talk about the 2 co-directors. So I really want to talk about Henson and Oz for just a mini second. So if you don't know Jim Henson or you don't know his work, I'm sorry in advance. But he gave you such greats as The Muppets. Essentially anything Muppets was all about Jim Henson, and Sesame Street. He really started working with Oz from 1963, Frank Oz from 1963. And the 2 of them together are pretty much, you can see the best of them in Bert and Ernie, or Kermit and Miss Piggy, or Kermit and Fozzie Bear, just because they had such a great chemistry. Frank Oz is also Yoda. So how he got Yoda was actually because George Lucas wanted Henson to help with the look of Yoda, and Henson recommended Oz for the role, the actual voice of Yoda. So Yoda might not have sounded like Yoda had Henson and Lucas not paired up.
It's interesting that several other films share a common DNA with this. Labyrinth, of course, because it's the same makers.
Yeah.
And but then, of course, Star Wars in many ways, things like Jabba the Hutt is a puppet with many people controlling it. And one of the people who did voices in this film...
I wasn't done.
Oh, I will come back to the voices.
Okay, go ahead with the voices.
Well, one of the voices in this film is also the voice of Admiral Akbar. It's a trap! From Return of the Jedi and Last Jedi, and Howard the Duck also he did the voice for. Tim Rose is his name, and so he did a number of those iconic voices.
Cool. So Tim Rose, you're now being inserted in between Jim Henson and Frank Oz, which I'm about to continue talking about.
Please continue.
I would love to. So Frank Oz, you might not know this, but he voiced Miss Piggy, Fozzie Bear, Animal, Sam Eagle, Cookie Monster.
Cookie.
C is for Cookie. Bert, Grover, and then, of course, Yoda. But he was also the director for Little Shop of Horrors, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, What About Bob, In and Out, Bowfinger, and the TV show Leverage, which some of those are my favorites. So Frank Oz, I did not know I was such a big fan, but apparently I am. And I think Parry is too.
Absolutely. And it was a little disconcerting, though, when you would hear those other characters coming through in a Skeksis. You know, you would hear a little bit of Fozzie Bear or
Yoda.
A little bit of Yoda when he would do the
I'm like, oh, why are you Skeksiing me right now?
Yes, the friend, come, friend. You could hear Yoda in there, and it made you shiver a little bit to have that crossover with something as disturbing as a Skeksis.
Agreed. So, soundtrack smashes.
Yes, although I have to quickly throw in that the set for Aughra's
lab
with the spinning planets and...
Hey, J.K. Rowling, we have a question for you. There's a lot of questions happening today. So, was Dark Crystal one of your favorite movies? Because we think that Aughra's lair might...
And if not Rowling, the production designers. So maybe we
For
need...
sure.
Yeah.
Production designers...
Because those spinning planets on the big machinery arms look like something out of Dumbledore's office, or at least one of the shops in the Wizarding World, the Ministry of Magic. Are
you secret Dark Crystal lovers?
And remember the thing that Aughra holds? I can't remember what it is, but it looks like the Deathly Hallows symbol.
Yes, it
to
does
some degree.
Completely. Folks, rewatch it just for that. Skip over the Skeksis.
I do think that there are
Mind you,
some
Trump.
influences there that
I named the one who shall not be named. My bad. Moving on. Soundtrack smashes. I think that's the best segue we could ever freaking have. So what was your soundtrack smash from this awesome score?
Well,
wait. Oh, which is very freaking hard to get. So if you get like a special edition on vinyl or CD, you should keep that. You should keep it, like dig it up at your parents' house or something when you visit them the next time. But you should definitely keep the vinyl. And if you got the CD, which was released in 2003, that's only one. The double CD is one of 5,000. So you should be keeping that too. That's worth some money. At least the vinyl anywhere from $35 on up to $100 and something, depending on your version. And if it's sealed, it's definitely in that $100 range.
I have the I don't know which version, but I have an early one with the poster still in storage.
Yes. We should keep that.
I was really surprised at the composer, Trevor Jones. I had forgotten how many things he had done, one of which was also Labyrinth and Dark City, Last of the Mohicans, In the Name of the Father. So he had a number that he did. And there was a cool story online about how he grew up across the street from a movie theater with old equipment, and the sound would drop out. And so it made him realize just how powerful the score was in a film. And if it was missing, that it really lessened the work. And so that was part of his inspiration for wanting to become a composer. For film specifically.
Awesome. So what was your favorite song?
The main title track leads right into, it's the Dark Crystal Overture. It kind of leads right into the power ceremony, which is where the light is coming through the crystal and is rejuvenating the Skeksis, which is what helps them to live so long and maintain their youthfulness. And the power ceremony is actually a really, really well composed piece, I thought. It's very epic and very dark as well. And it really kind of captures not only that world, but sort of the evil and darkness that has been shrouding this place for so long. So I really enjoyed that piece.
Awesome.
How about you?
Oh, my favorite soundtrack?
Not that you haven't been giving it away.
Another world. Another time. The Crystal. Is actually Trip Like I Do by the Crystal Method. Which I think I can say this retrospectively. So one thing that blew my mind was I was like, well, they're quoting the movie, right? So, and I'm really freaking ridiculous for not knowing this because I am a Crystal Method fan, the Crystal Method fan. So, and I've seen them live. So it's very interesting that I did not know this, but I didn't know this. If you line up Chirp Like I Do, like the beginning of the album Vegas, to the Dark Crystal, Chirp Like I Do directly syncs up with the opening segment of the film. And and Ken and Scott confirmed it on Reddit, their Reddit, that actually was done and done purposefully because they are such big fans of the movie. And in fact, their name does come from a mashup of a couple of different things, including the Dark Crystal.
It's pretty awesome. Now, one of it was a girl named Crystal hanging out at the studio. They had originally said was where the name came from. But
no.
yeah, there was something you were telling me. But yeah, I like this story better.
So the girl that's on there, why don't we chip like I do? That one, that's from an answering machine tape from Scott's answering machine tape. So, yo, chick, what were you doing? And how much do you regret that or not regret that now?
Did they have to pay her royalties every time they
I don't think so because she freely left her message on the tape.
Yeah.
So I don't really think so.
It does line up very nicely with the beginning. It's sort of like, Dark Side of the Moon and Wizard of Oz. Kinda.
Not to discount what Trevor Jones did because the music does obviously make the film. I just thought this was a fun, different take on soundtrack.
Oh, no,
smashes.
it totally is. And Crystal Method are awesome, so...
Another world. And I'm so stuck. And they quote the movie directly, which is, also very interesting. And the narration.
Honestly, for years and years,
The Crystal.
I had forgotten what that was from, and I kept thinking, like, this is from some movie. I know what this is, but I couldn't quite place it.
And I had no idea, and I still love the song. So I don't know what that says about me. Stop. So, but this is also a great segue into culture impact and sort of wrapping this up in a nice little bow, right? So they're not doing a sequel. They pretty much, the Henson Company tried to do it for so long, and I think they finally come to the conclusion that a sequel might not happen. However, the prequel, as Parry has already alluded to, will be on Netflix, hopefully sometime soon. And we can all watch the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance together and either weep or rejoice in joy. I'm not quite sure, but I definitely think it'll be polarizing.
And it makes sense that it's a prequel, though, because the sequel, unless things go horribly wrong after the end was kind of like, oh, it's a rebuilding that, for those who don't know, you may not want to listen to this.
No, you can listen. It's okay. It's really not going to like...
Throughout the film, you get the idea. If you haven't figured it out by the end, you really aren't paying attention.
The
but
crystal.
Every time a Skeksis or a mystic Uru dies, their counterpart in the other species dies as well. They vanish. And what it turns out in the end is when the crystal is restored, the... two creatures to two races merge to
Devastator. Exactly. Merge.
And they
I can't.
So I have to shout out to the kids in middle school who taught me, because I was a child of the 80s, that you could flip the bird as a transformer like a plane jumping off a table, and you're flying along with your middle finger out, or you could do the super flip off, and it's merged to form Devastator, which is where you have the one arm crossed over the other and the whole arm up with flipping the bird.
Oh my God, I don't know how we just went off on this tangent. We are delusional.
Everything I needed to know in life I learned in middle school.
Mabes. Cultural impact. So there were books written, novelizations. You wanted to say something. You had your hand up.
I was just going to say that when the Skeksis and the Uru merge into the Urskeks.
Devastator.
Into the Urskeks, they become like these clear, glowing, ethereal beings who basically say... Exactly. Who say we were kind of screwing around and we cracked the crystal and we split ourselves and it basically ruined the whole planet and led to genocide and all these horrible things. Yes, it was a allegory to global warming. So the races come together and it basically says, hey, these two sides operate together. They're in all of us. But for us to survive and evolve into the next level of being, we need to be able to reconcile those two pieces.
Higher.
And so that's basically where it concludes. And so I know that one idea for the sequel was going to be the power of the Dark Crystal, where some being from the inside of the planet was going to steal a piece of the crystal to restore the dying sun. But I know Frank Oz in interviews has said, why would you need to make a sequel?
The crystal. Exactly. Let's leave well enough alone, folks. They just redid Overboard and they had to switch the roles. Let's just leave well enough alone, folks. Don't fuck with my 80s movies. There's no freaking reason to redo shit.
You can redo all the 90s ones you like, but not the...
No. Just dumb. If you didn't get it right once, go away. And if it's perfection, don't touch it. No one can replace Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell in Overboard.
I wouldn't even argue that.
And I'm like, who can really replace Jim Henson in the Dark Crystal sequel? Okay.
No. So again, the only thing they really could do was a prequel, and it's supposed to only be 10 parts.
Even prequels,
so
I can't. 10 episodes. Ugh.
So we'll see how that goes.
I know Jim wants to spread the love and the message.
Jim doesn't want to do anything.
Well,
he has become an Urskek.
Well, yes. Okay, agreed. But I'm saying I know the whole concept of it is that this was his pet project, right? This is what he truly believed in because he believed in this new agey Seth material-ishness.
But Oz has adamantly insisted over the years that there was no real plan for a sequel, that has all sort of been pushed in later years as the popularity grew, but he insists that they originally had not planned to do one.
No, and I'm not saying that he had. I think that he would be flattered that we want to continue this. Well, that people want to continue this. I don't want to continue this at all. I think I've had enough of the Skeksis for a lifetime. I've had enough time to reflect. I've had all that good stuff. Exactly. And you have video games. They came out with a ton of video games for it. Apple and Atari. Hey, we have board games. You've got children's books. Vogue even asked the costume designers to go ahead and design something for them as well based on the film. You have the Crystal Method. You have Jean Grey still bringing it alive in tweets. I think we have a lot of cultural impact still already happening from the very original Dark Crystal. I don't think we need more. I think that it does very well all by itself. Maybe I'm just a 80s movie purist that way at heart.
No, I totally agree that it doesn't really need to be remade. It gets referenced a ton. You see it in posters and in the background of things, and there have been sci-fi shows where the villains look suspiciously like Skeksis.
Oh yeah, and Lucas was a huge Dark Crystal fan.
Makes sense.
Huge. So Yoda and Obi pretty much embody these same ideas that we're talking about, and good versus evil, and how good turns into evil, and how essentially they're all the same being, right? In one. There's so much of that already permeating the literature. Exactly. So I don't
use the crystal.
The crystal. So do you want to ask me the last question of the day?
Well, we know what your initial impression was, but what is your overall feeling and takeaway?
My overall feeling and takeaway is that it's a pretty good movie. I don't know if it's a kid's movie, but overall, it's still a pretty good movie. I can understand why it was so ahead of the time in the early 80s. Like so many things, right?
Yes.
So I understand the brilliance of it and why it was super revered and all of those pieces. And the effects were really just truly phenomenal.
Well, it's interesting. Coming out of it, having not seen it in a long time, I was really interested in your reaction. And I just kept wondering why
I wanted to leave so bad. Just kidding. Not really.
why it was sort of tearing at my brain so much. And of course, there were the obvious themes.
The crystal.
Of, the Skeksis wear these ornate outfits, and sort of like you were saying about pretty people, as they were obviously meant to be like an aristocratic group, potentially royalty or just a ruling class. And even some of their mannerisms reminded me of stereotypical portrayals of certain types within wealthy classes. But there was more to it, and more than just the combination of the two elements. But it was really Paula who, you credit for getting you in a lot of trouble. But Paula said, the reason I was fascinated by this as a kid and still love it is it's because it's the first time I saw something portrayed that explained why people take advantage of other people and use them, and they're literally draining their life essence to use for themselves. And she said it was, those cultural undertones of racism and classism that we know are there, but that it was really putting it there out on the surface. And it's a privileged class that forcibly maintains their power and sustains themselves by draining that life essence from those they've subjugated and enslaved, and they use up all the natural resources and pretty much exhaust their environment of any life-sustaining ability. And it's a very literal portrayal of how an aristocracy or a ruling class, or even just the wealthy, use the less fortunate or underprivileged to keep themselves in a power position and to feed their vanity. So whether you're talking about rich or poor, or conservative versus liberal, developed versus developing nations or societies, colonizers versus the colonized, big business versus small business, management versus workers, it just really shows that separation between the two, and how one always needs the other, especially the upper classes needing to build their culture, supposed. It shows the hypocrisy of a so-called civilized society, but it builds itself on the backs of other peoples, like the way they drained all the life essence out of the Gelflings and were doing it out of the pod people. And the fact that the prophecy states that it's going to be a Gelfling that destroys them, and so they engage in a preemptive strike and destroy another entire culture. They commit a genocide to protect their own way of living and their own interests. And so I think the commentary that certainly had been seen in the world up to that point, and God knows we have seen repeated since, really makes it increasingly more relevant as time goes on. Sadly, it would be nice if we were closer to the Urskeks at the end, and we could say, "Hey, Henson had it right." But what he had right was the idea of what we should be, but we seem further than ever from actually achieving that stability.
Agreed. Maybe we just need Jen to come and save us with his crystal shard.
No, we need Kira with her wings.
Exactly. There we
and
go.
Fizzgig.
And Fizzgig. I have an epic fail moment.
We have a correction.
No.
Retraction?
This
it's a
is
correction.
an epic fail moment. So last podcast, when I said George Benson, I will not blame shift. I will take full responsibility because I know that voice, and that voice was not George Benson. It was Luther Vandross.
How could you do Luther that way?
I don't know how I could do either of them that way, quite honestly, but I hope that some of y'all listen to George Benson just because I blew him up anyway, because he's got amazingness.
You went full
already.
fangirl.
I did go full fangirl. He does. He has some amazingness, and I also go very full on fangirl for Luther Vandross. So I just feel like in this instance, it's a win-win situation, except for me because I look like an asshole. But it's a win-win situation for our listeners because now they have listened to George Benson, right? Because I brought him up, and they're now listening to Luther Vandross because that is still my soundtrack smash.
See, I think we've only had one listener in Israel because of the Benson error. I think Israel just wrote us off.
Go fuck yourself. Shameless self-promo. Please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. We really enjoy the reviews. Indeed. And obviously, as you rate and review the podcast, more people will be able to find our podcast. So if you enjoy it, please rate, review, and subscribe so you get the new stuff the day it comes out. Also, check out our website. I promise to update it soon, Parry, at youhaven'tseenwhatmovie.com. And we will have interesting tidbits, like maybe I'll have the Crystal Method Dark Crystal mashup for you, like the link there. So eventually, when I get time, because I'm a PhD student, I will update that site. But still check out what we have on there, because we do have a ton of content already on the website. And a ton
of good stuff on our social media, too.
Exactly. So. Oh, yeah. Social media, Insta, Facebook, Twitter, at You Haven't Seen What Movie. And let us know what movies you think we would be interested in reviewing, and share your own stories of how these movies impacted you. Did the Dark Crystal terrorize you? Or was it just your favorite family movie ever?
I had an old friend from University of New Mexico actually comment when we put it out there on the feelings, and she said it really scared her. Amy said that it had really scared her as a child.
Amy, I'm with you. Amy, I am totally with you. I can't even imagine watching it as a child. I mean, I died over Piranha. Anyway, I died over Gremlins. Let's just be real right now. So this would have scared the shit out of me.
Was that another thing you watched at a sleepover? Because it seems like everything you watched at a sleepover was somehow scarring.
No. I mean, I watched April Fool's Day, and that was a sleepover, and I still want to watch it, right? So horror is okay with people because I feel like we still live that just knowing, and you're able to protect yourself from it. But these other creatures that you're not able to protect yourself from, and you don't know if they exist or not, that's a very different conversation.
Yeah, you don't want to imagine a Skeksis under your bed unclothed when you're a child.
Really? Okay. Hi. And so, let us know what you think. And you can go ahead and reach us on any social media or on our Gmail on our website. And I think that's it for this episode of You Haven't Seen What?
Yep. We made it through the Dark Crystal. When we first watched it, we were like, I don't know if we want to watch that again review this. But again, I think we've really come to a place where it changed us.
Oh, yeah, you didn't tell about the fanboys who made me turn off my pen with my light because they were being disturbed by my pen light.
Yes, Joelle was taking notes in the theater.
Trying to take notes in the theater.
Now, mind you,
it's this little itty bitty light emanating from the tip of my pen. They're like, can you turn that off, please?
It's very distracting.
It's very distracting.
Well, the funny part was that it was my fault for wanting to sit in the center of the theater, because I like to sit right on level with the screen. And there were like 10 people in the theater, and these two guys sat right next to us. There was no one else near us.
And
they sat right next to us because they wanted that same position. And had we even just been a couple seats down, it would have been okay. But I
don't think it would have been okay. So that's why we're going to leave it with our parting words, which is to remember.
Be kind.
Rewinds.
Bye.
Till next time. Bye.
Oh, bye.
Oh, bye.
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 The crystal.
The crystal. Bye.
Shot.
Shot. Everybody.
We're not going to let white people steal our essence.
Exactly. Maybe that's why we had to make Essence magazine.
Ooh.
It's a thought.
That's a great point. You're right. I wonder. It's to restore the essence that the Skeksis stole.